Hello friends, what I'm working on today are some covers, well, box lids, roofs, whatever you want to call them. This is actually for a 6-frame box design that I have around here, but I'll show you that they're actually made out of 1x6 material on the sides, and I used 1/2-inch plywood on the top, and naturally I've had it painted, and that is to protect this skirting here more than anything else. I don't bother to have the insides painted because ostensibly it's not supposed to get rained on. But what I'm using to put these roofs on, or the metal on the roof, is a 1/4-inch crown stapler, pneumatic. It doesn't have any trouble driving the staples even through this double and triple layers. And here's the staples. They're either 5/8 or 3/4 of an inch long. And honestly, it's not really very complicated. I start with the corners. Get the metal in the right position and try to make sure you keep your fingers out of the way, so if you have any staples that want to curve and come back out of the wood, that they don't get your fingers. And what I do is I go ahead and staple the multiple layers, and yeah, I should probably put some silicone or something on the corners where they're folded. I might do that next year if it causes any kind of problems. And a friend of mine bends this sheet metal for me. And it's a little loose, but that's okay because the staple will pull it in. It doesn't matter that it's a little bit too big. And then once that's done, I just turn them up edgeways. It doesn't take that many. I didn't space those perfectly. It doesn't matter. Well, I'm certainly not spacing that one perfect. See if I can at least get this one spaced about right. And then once I'm done with this, I have another process I'll show you, but I'm gonna go ahead and get all of these boxes, all the sheet metal stapled onto them right quick. And then I'll come back and show you the next process. All right, so I've got all my metal caps stapled on, as you see, and what I have done is I have some of this 2-inch thick pink insulation. I don't know what the R value is or anything like that. I just noted it works. But they are pre-cut from someone else, and they don't quite fit in my tops just right. They were actually given to me, and someone pre-cut them to exactly the proper size to sit on top of a 10-frame, and then they just set their tops on them and strapped them down or weighted them down or something like that. Whereas what I do, you see I have this top that is a 1x6 with a plywood cap on it, and I put this sheet metal on it solely to protect the plywood. The paint protects the 1x6. So what I've done is I have so many of these that are exactly the right size for a 10-frame box that I just took one and I cut it down to the size that I need, and I had to add 1 inch to it, and actually just a touch over an inch because I don't make things exactly precise, but I cut it in such a way that it is a press fit. And with it being a press fit like that, it doesn't fall out. Which this one is still a little bit more loose than I tend to like for them to be, but it's tight enough that it's not going to fall out. And when I'm not using them, I store all my lids upside down anyway, so we don't get a lot of spider infestations and stuff like that in them. The barn that I store them in is not exactly airtight. Plenty of bugs and other vermin run in and out. So that's this stage, and once I get done with this, I will actually show you how they work on one of my 6-frame boxes with the feeder shim or candy board or whatever method you use in the wintertime. If you don't use a feeding method in the wintertime, you actually could use a 1x4 and put the insulation in and still have enough gap to, or not enough gap, but enough skirting to make sure you've covered up your inner cover and all of that. Can the bees chew on this insulation? Yes, they can. Do they? I've had some chew on it. It's really not a big deal, because by the time they get to the point that they're going to chew on this, it should be time for you to take your insulated tops off and your candy boards and go back to a regular warm weather system. This isn't for everybody. This is what works for me. So I'll be back in just a little bit and show you how it works on one of my 6-frame deep boxes with a feeder shim. Alrighty, so here we are. This is one of my 6-frame tops. It's 2x6 or 1x6 by 11 1/4, or just shy of 11 1/4. What is that? That's 11 3/16 by 20 1/2. I've got my piece of insulation cut. It's a little tight going in. That's what I want it to be. And this is a feeder ring. It's made out of a 1x2 furring strip. I've got another video up about me making candy boards where I staple a piece of 1/2-inch hardware cloth in. This is one that I just made a frame, and I didn't staple the cloth in because I was in a bit of a rush to get my candy boards made up so I could get them drying. But this is one of my 6-frame boxes, and the way it works is the feeder ring or candy board or whatever it is will just sit right on top of it. And I make it out of these 1x6s. So you see, I've got this handle here and I've already measured it. But this 1x6 gives me enough room for this 2-inch thick piece of insulation to go up inside of it and sit on top of this right here. But it still covers up the crack where the candy board sits on top of the box. It covers up everything, so if you've got driving rain, because I made these when I put candy boards on one year, last year actually, and I just used regular tops on my 10-frame boxes, and the driving rain drove in through those cracks and it wound up killing some bees because there was just too much moisture. Sorry about that, I had a bad camera angle there. I'm not going to reshoot the video, but here we are. We've got the feeder ring, and on the top it just goes right on, which these tops I made a little bit tight. They'll go on easier on a heavier hive box that doesn't shift around with a heavy candy board on it. And that's all it is to it. And I elected to paint them a very, very dark gray because darker colors absorb and attract heat. So I was hoping that that might help the bees not have to work so hard, at least during the daytime in the winter. and it might help melt the snow off of them faster if we have any snow or ice, as long as the days aren't too cloud covered. So there you have it. That's how I make these things. It's late on a Friday afternoon. I've got 2 more I've got to cut insulation for, and then I've got to go put these covers on if I have time before sunset. But anyway, this is how we pamper our bees in this episode. We just put these insulated tops on. Now, there's a lot of people that are going to argue that you don't need to worry about keeping the bees warm. They're not warm in trees, and you know, they don't have insulation in trees and so forth and so on. That's fine. You do you. But I'm going to try to pamper mine. I don't think they need any insulation wrap around the box because heat rises, and as the winter goes on, the bees move up towards the top of the hive. So as long as you can keep the heat from escaping out through the top, which is what the goal is here, and keep the wind and the rain and the water out of them, they'll do pretty good. But until the next time, I hope all goes well, and pamper your bees.